Okay, guys, I'm back. I was considering putting this all together, but I noticed that the first part was 30 minutes long. So I'm going to chunk it up so that you have an opportunity to sort of look at what you want to look at. And I think I'll put on this one, I'll put some timestamps as to like what weeks I'm talking about. I think that'll be helpful. So I'll see if I can get that together. Okay, so now March um, is a time where there's great potential under the surface. And it isn't until the sun moves into Aries that we finally sort of get an idea of what has been sort of fomenting under the surface. Okay. Now we have to remember as we start March, we still have Mercury retrograde. It is at the beginning of March, March 1st, it's still retrograde in Pisces. But then it does retrograde back into Aquarius on the 4th. And so the first 3 days have more of a Piscean energy. And we're very familiar with that because we've been swimming in that fishbowl for what seems like forever almost. That sort of like amorphous, not really sure anything is, imaginative. What was that word? Where did I leave my keys? Just confused, losing words. I had a client say, I noticed that you're sort of like losing your place and all of that. And while I have certainly reasons in my life, like lack of sleep, to lose my place, I think it has more to do with the energy of Pisces. So if you're feeling that, don't fret. Don't worry that you're getting dementia or that, this is a terrible thing. Um, I mean, take care of yourself, right? I'm not saying, oh, I'll be fine, but do what you have to do for yourself, but don't judge yourself for not being able to just because we're not in that place, we're not in that space, and we're not in that space as we start March. March starts the month. The first like sort of major aspect that happens is on the 2nd, and it's a square between the sun and the moon. That's what's up here. This is the first quarter square of the new moon that we had in Pisces at 5 degrees, right? 5 degrees imagination. What are we imagining? What are we creating in the sort of the etheric plane that we want to bring into fruition? Once we start a new cycle, once the zodiac starts at Aries. So there's a lot of that sort of creation. And I talked a lot about that in the first part of the video when I was talking about Pisces and Aries. And so this is the first quarter square, the crisis in action. So you want to take actions on whatever was planted at that new moon. And the moon is in Gemini. And so this is sort of a mental exercise. Now you have to remember that Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini, is retrograde. And so it's a learning and exploration and a curiosity on how to sort of build the foundations that we need to allow those seeds that were planted at the new moon in Pisces to find fertile ground, okay, and to be supported and to be nurtured. The first quarter square has the energy of Aries and Cancer, and it's like, hey, I'm here, and hey, I need my bottle. Somebody take care of me, please. So that's the energy, and we do have to ultimately take care of ourselves, but it's also the energy of taking care of family and building the foundation for your family, and sort of like your literal, like the roof over your head kind of energy, right? Okay, so that's how it starts. So we're already riled up. We want to get going. We want to get moving, but Mercury's retrograde, right? On the next day, we have another square, and it's another first quarter square. And first quarter squares are always crisis in action. It's a first quarter square between Venus and Saturn. Now, what's interesting about this is that it occurs at almost the last degree of Aries, Venus, and Saturn. Okay, we're in Capricorn, where Saturn is. I always do that Saturn Capricorn thing. So if I say Capricorn and I should be saying Saturn, or I say Saturn, I should be saying Capricorn. No, that's what I mean. Okay. You do this, you'll understand too. You start talking about it, you'll be like, wow. Okay. First quarter square. crisis in action. But what's a crisis in action on? Well, Saturn is the structure of our reality. Venus is what's important to us. It's what we value. It's our relationship to ourselves. It's the feminine. Okay. This square indicates a crisis in action around the necessity to build foundations for those things that are important to us, which is very much a good energy to sort of start the month with, because it is a month that's highly ultimately creative. And so we kind of have to know what we want to create. Okay. It does create crisis. Okay. But we're kind of used to crisis, but we are kind of used to crisis. Don't get numb to an inner, if you have an inner crisis, because there's so much crisis on the outside, right? That's why it pays to sort of pull back from that. But you have that inner crisis within yourself, you want to act on that. Okay. And then, as I said, March 4th, Mercury moves into Aquarius. So it's still retrograde, but the energy is different. We're a little less lost in the sauce, which can happen. And we're a little bit more mentally sort of looking. The problem with that, because Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, and Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. So there's a lot of genius here, but it's almost as if it's the genius coming down from spirit, from our higher self, from our higher mind, from our higher spiritual self, coming down into within us. And so while it's Mercury retrograde, we still need to look within for the answers. And it's going to be less of a Pisces energy that we're going to experience and more of an Aquarius energy that we're going to experience. So it's out of the box thinking, it's innovation, it's working toward the common good, it's revolution. Okay. All right. And then on the same day, Venus, the planet of what is important to us and what we value, moves into Taurus. And Venus loves being in Taurus because Venus rules Taurus. Venus is very comfortable. In Aries, she's got on her leather jacket, she's on her motorcycle with her helmet, and she's all looking hot. But don't you F with me, man. I'll go get you. Right? That's like Aries. Taurus is like she finally gets home from her trip and she takes off her leathers and she puts on her favorite gardening clothes or her favorite comfy robe, or she wants to be comfortable. She wants to be comfortable in her own skin. She wants to feel safe. And she wants to build. She wants to build something. She wants to create something. Taurus is highly creative energy as well. It's the first earth sign. It's fixed earth in astrology. And so it is where we stabilize. It's where we create the root systems so that the plants that do grow have a firm foundation. And so that becomes important to us. That becomes important to us. And money becomes important to us because whether we like it or not, we can't live on this planet without it. And so perhaps we look at our budgets. Perhaps something happens with the economy that requires us to sort of tighten our belts or become more resourceful. Because as I said in the other video, we have a lot. There are people, it breaks my heart. I was watching it on Democracy Now! These people in Syria who have nothing. They're living in tents and under trees, and children are freezing to death because they don't have firewood. They don't have medicine, no food. And then they're getting strafed. It's beyond. And if you don't think you have anything, imagine those people there who really have nothing. And you'll just see how happy, how grateful you need to be for what you do have, as little as it might be. There have been times in my life when I have had very, very little to work with, and yet abundance was all around me, and I've had a good life, and I've had a charmed life, and if being grateful at that time when you feel like there's nothing left, that's the time to be grateful. And then as you bring abundance into your life, then you can share it with those people in Syria. But it has to come from within. It has to come from a sense of internal abundance. And this is something that we can also sort of connect to in March. Okay. Then on the 8th of March, two things happen. We have two synodic cycles beginning. Remember, synodic cycle is a cycle between two planets, and it will, depending on the two planets that we're dealing with, as I said in the first video, Saturn and Jupiter are going to be making a conjunction at the end of the year. Their synodic cycle is 20 years. Okay, these are both interplanet synodic cycles, inner planets with transpersonal planets. So this is a time where the transpersonal energies, the energies beyond our third dimensional reality, plant seeds. And it depends on what personal planet it's connecting with. Okay, and the personal planets are the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. So any of those are the personal planets. How we are living our life day by day. When those transpersonal forces come in and make a conjunction to those, it is seeding our everyday stuff with cosmic energy. Okay, so on the 8th, we have two synodic cycles beginning. They're both year-long synodic cycles. The first one is the Sun and Neptune. They make a conjunction at 19 degrees of Pisces. Now, the interesting thing about the Sun and Neptune is that the Sun demarcates, right? When the sun is out at its brightest, at its highest, everything is clear, right? You can see the lines are definite. There's a demarcation, there's a delineation, okay, with the sun. Neptune, on the other hand, is fog. And for any of you who live in fog, I think we all live in foggy, well, maybe not. Maybe, I don't think they get fog in the desert. But anyway, for those of us who live in the fog, right? And, I've lived on the East Coast my whole life, and now I live, right by Cape Cod, and there's always fog. There's always, it's kind of beautiful in a way. I used to live on the canal. Which is the canal that's between the mainland and the Cape. And there were nights you would walk along the canal, and you were right next to the water, and the fog was so thick you could barely see in front of you. But there was this sort of like all-encompassing serenity within that, and it was just such a beautiful energy. And so we have both of those things coming together, a delineation and that fogginess, right? And so we have this connection between the sun and Neptune, and it is seeding Neptune, the transpersonal planet, is seeding the sun, our conscious awareness, right? With the energy of Pisces. Love, compassion, forgiveness, imagination, delusion, illusion, lies. So depending on what you want to take out of this, it could be something very beautiful, or it could be something that's smoke and mirrors. Again, we have the energy to work with. We have free will to decide what we're going to do with it. And that's why we have to be responsible with what we do, because it's nobody else's fault. It's because we make the choice of how to utilize that energy. So at 19 degrees of Pisces, the Sabian symbol is a master instructing his disciple. It says the transfer of power and knowledge which keeps the original spiritual and creative impulse of the cycle active and undeviated. And so this is about wisdom coming from the higher realms. That's pretty much what 19 degrees of Pisces means. So keep your inner ear and your third eye open for inspirations at this time. On the same day, Venus, the planet of love, the planet of what we love, what's important to us, the feminine, makes its conjunction to Uranus. This is a year-long cycle. Uranus now is in Taurus. Venus is in Taurus. Venus is powerful in Taurus, right? Uranus in Taurus is disrupting our comfort zone. We are being tossed out of our comfort zone. We're being required to look at our money and our resources and our relationship to the feminine in a new and revolutionary way. Uranus is the higher mind. So the higher mind comes in and seeds of that Venus, what we value, what's important to us, and starts a cycle of Venus and Uranus. And that occurs at 5 degrees of Taurus. Sorry. I'm looking at you like you're going to tell me. And so this is the symbol of 5 degrees of Taurus. It says, a widow at an open grave. Says the impermanence of all material and social bonds. The key word, discard the past. Discard the past. I want to tell you a little story that my husband told me last night when we were sitting, just listening to some music. And he has a love blanket that we bought years ago. He actually bought it for my mother. And it's red. It's a little blanket. It's red. It's really adorable. And he took the blanket and he put it around the tree. He put it around the Christmas tree this year. He wanted to use that, the love blanket, as sort of the base for the Christmas tree. And he said when he went over to look at it, I think when he first put it down, or maybe when he was gonna take it away, the word love, because so let me describe the blanket. It's got love, and then it's got all these other like things about love, and maybe I'll show it to you. Maybe I'll show it to you at the end. And it was love, the big word love, because the word love is the biggest word, and there's all these little words. And it said love, and then it was folded, and then the next word he saw was the past. The past. So I'm going to take that as a message for you guys. It says here to discard the past, but I would say love the past. Love the past, because it is the past that has brought you to this moment of awakening that we're all having together. So no matter how horrible your past, you may judge your past to be, you wouldn't be the person you are today without it. Love your past. Okay, so, all right, how many minutes have I gone? 16. I've only gone the first week, and this isn't even the most dynamic week. Ay, ay, ay. All right, so we have on the 9th of March, we have a full moon in the sign of Virgo, because the sun is in Pisces. The full moon is always the sun opposite the moon, so the moon has to be in Virgo. This occurs at 20 degrees. Okay, 20 degrees is a pretty active degree this year when it comes to the full moons. I think this is the third full moon we've had at 20 degrees. And full moons are always points of awareness. We always become aware of something. We may become aware for the first time of what was planted on that new moon. Now, the sun in Pisces, of course, and the moon in Virgo, that axis, the axis that the full moon is on, is the axis of healing. Physical healing, Virgo, spiritual healing, Pisces. Okay? So there's an awareness perhaps around a physical issue that needs to be looked at, a spiritual issue that needs to be looked at. Something is going to come into your radar and you're going to see it. And you're going to know what it is that you need to look at in your life. Where do you have to have the awareness? What needs healing? What needs forgiveness? What needs atonement? Okay. What do you need to let go of? And what do you need to apply yourself to? Those are the energies. Okay. So in this full moon, this is, we have the sun up here. And this is, I always do this for Washington, D.C. We have the sun up here in the D.C. chart anyway, in that 9th house, in a very close conjunction to Neptune, because just a few days ago it made its initial conjunction. So the sun in Pisces, is Pisces enough, and then you add Neptune. So this is a really mystical energy, okay? The sun and Neptune. Opposite the moon here in Virgo. In that third house, the third house is in the United States anyway. This is for Washington, D.C., so this would be the U.S. chart, is about discerning what you hear on the media, because the third house is the media. So be very discerning about what you're evaluating and how that affects you physically. Know what to let in and know what not to let in, okay? So we have this opposition, and it's part of a kite formation because we have a grand, Earth trine between the moon and we have Pluto, we have Jupiter, we have Pallas, and we have Mars. They're all close enough to sort of be trying this. All this energy in Capricorn, being responsible. Trine Vesta up here in Taurus, Vesta is the asteroid associated with what we devote ourselves to. And in Taurus, we could be devoting ourselves to our values, devoting ourselves to money, devoting ourselves to that which is most important to us, devoting ourselves to Mother Earth. Okay? That's all sort of in this mix of this full moon. And so we will have awareness around what needs to be fixed. We will have awareness around what needs to be healed. And we will have access to the energy, to the earthly energy of all those planets in Capricorn and this moon in Virgo, and the focus that we can get through Vesta. Okay, so this is a powerful new moon of awareness. And it, because it's a kite, because this grand Earth trine, one point in it is being opposed by the Sun and Neptune. There's action here. We take action on this stuff. And so the Sun Neptune are trine Mars, Pallas. The closest here is Pallas, Jupiter, and Pluto. And that sextile is an opportunity to sort of open the lines of communication. It's an opportunity for progressive change and progressive thinking based on our compassion and our love for one another. Okay, and then over here with Vesta, being in, and this is a little wider of a sextile, but if you do the orb out a little bit, it could still be a sextile. And that's really focusing on money, the things that are important to us, relationship, the feminine, the earth, with compassion and forgiveness. Okay, so that's the full moon. On the same day as the full moon, Mercury finally goes direct at 29 degrees of Aquarius. Now, you might say, yay, Mercury's direct. But it's in Aquarius, it's got to move through Pisces. So we still have that sort of otherworldly energy, but it's more when it finally does move into when Mercury finally moves back into Pisces and then goes through all of Pisces. It has forward momentum. It has forward motion, and it's sort of going to bring all of that energy that we've been sort of stirring the pot with. It's going to sort of bring it along with it, and it's going to manifest itself at the other end. It's like a hose, and it's going to come out. All right. So we have that. March 11th, we have a sextile between Jupiter and the Sun. Sextiles are opportunities to communicate, opportunities to change, to be curious. In this case, it opens the lines of communication, the need to open the lines of communication. Jupiter is our ability to expand, but in Capricorn, it has to do with expansion of structures. It has to do with becoming aware of the limitations that we have, understanding them, and yet growing through that process, because we learn as much, or if not more, through our limitations than we do through the expansion of what's given to us. It's almost like what you earn, you learn. Oh, I just made that up. I better patent that, or whatever you do to trademark it. Okay, trademarked. I don't think it works that way. All right, let's see here. Okay, I'm going to skip this. On March 16th, I'll talk about this when the day comes. So you won't miss this part. And people are going, what is she pointing to? I don't even know what that means. Doesn't matter. Know that I'll talk about it when the day comes. On the 16th of March, Mercury moves back into Pisces. So now we have to go through all of Pisces. Okay. All right. And also on that day, we have a last quarter moon. So where we had the full moon on the 9th, on the 16th, we have the last quarter moon, the crisis in consciousness moon. This is when we start to have to take responsibility for ourselves. The moon is in Sagittarius at that time. The sun in Pisces. Sagittarius is a sign of religion. It's our attempt to explain the unexplainable. And Pisces is the unexplainable. So, Crisis in consciousness, one of those spiritual crises. So be prepared. All right, and it begins. This is the big week. I think this is when a lot of stuff starts to happen. Oh boy, I'm talking a long time. Sorry this has taken so long, but it's such important information. I don't think I can, keep it to myself. March 19th, we have the Sun make a sextile to Saturn. The Sun is at 30 degrees of Pisces. 30 degrees of Pisces is the end of the zodiacal year. Zodiacal year. Like, that's better, right? Zodiacal sounds better. Saturn is at 30 degrees of Capricorn. Its ruling sign, Capricorn, is a sign that Saturn rules. It's the end of the line for Saturn in the sign it rules. Sort of like there's these wrapping up energies with both the Sun in Pisces, sort of ending the whole year, and the Saturn in Capricorn. This is a Gemini energy sextile. So there's a curiosity energy here. There's a gathering of information. You can also look at this as an Aquarian sextile for technical reasons I'm not going to tell you about. But we look at both Gemini and Aquarius and that energy of Gemini and Aquarius. So Gemini is the information that's been gathered. Aquarius is what we know from our experience. So in Gemini, there's less experience with the information because the information is new. With Aquarius, we've had an opportunity to experiment and learn from the journey through the zodiac to a point of I know something. And so this is a communication of what you know. And that Sun at 30 degrees of Pisces, as the last point of the Sun in for the zodiacal year that starts with Aries, it's almost like a wrap up of the last year since the last time right before the Sun went into Aries. And so what has your year been like? And then with Saturn there, we're asking about structure. Have you restructured? Is there still structure to be restructured? Now, don't panic because Saturn does go back into Capricorn, and we do have opportunities to continue to structure our lives in the way that are going to work for us and that are going to support us for the next however many years, depending on where Saturn is in your chart. For me, I'm having my second Saturn return, so I'm sort of preparing the structure for my next 30 years of life. And so I have to be very cognizant about different things than my first Saturn return. Okay? All right. On the same day that we have the sextile, sextiles are always mentally stimulating, and the word sex is in them, so they're always good. So you see a sextile, it's good. Even between two planets that are difficult to work with each other, sextiles aren't that bad. It's probably I think when you're dealing with two difficult planets, the sextile is the best aspect. The trine, people like trines, but there's too much flow with the trine, and you can't stop the flow. With the sextile, you always have a choice of how to go with it because it's mental. And with mental things, there's always two choices. Otherwise, it wouldn't be mental. It would be something else. Okay? All right. On the same day, the Sun moves into Aries. And that's occurring, at least in Washington, D.C. or here in Massachusetts, that's occurring at 11:50 p.m. So at the end of the day. So in most places in the United States, it's going to occur on the 20th. And then I'm not sure down under, I'm assuming it'll be on the 21st or could be on the 20th, like later in the day. So it's probably the 20th down under, but later in the day. But it's the same day. Well, you know what I'm talking about, you people in Australia. I'm still trying to figure out the time stuff. I hope I'm getting better at it for you guys. Now, the ruling planet of Aries is Mars. And whenever the sun moves into Aries, I always look to see what Mars is doing because it's important. It's sort of like Sun in Aries is the major. What sign and where Mars is sitting and what's it doing is another sort of like underlayment, another layer of meaning. Now, Aries is the beginning of the zodiacal year. It is the Aries point. It is a powerful point. Whenever anything goes over the Aries point, there's something powerful happens, powerful change. The Aries point is one of the cardinal points. Cardinal points are about change. And so there's a change of energy. All that work in Pisces that we've sort of been boil and boil, toil and trouble, or not toil and trouble, I'm going to create this. Now it starts to rise up because Aries rises up, and you can even see the symbol of Aries is sort of coming up like this, rising up out of the waters of Pisces to bear something or have something new be born. Okay. And what's so very interesting about where Mars is that Mars is at 23 degrees of Capricorn. And you're like, yo, so what? Well, this is the same degree that we had our Pluto-Saturn conjunction back in January. Pluto-Saturn conjunction, new phase, right? As Saturn moves away from Pluto, and there's only one conjunction of this, we're in a new phase. It's about starting in the direction of our destiny, building building the structures of power. And now, on the first day of spring in the northern hemisphere and the first day of fall in the southern hemisphere, Mars is at that degree. So it's activating that degree. Okay. And so something about that January time frame corresponds with this sun moving into Aries. The sun in this chart is actually square the nodes of the moon. The nodes of the moon is how we react and respond in the past and in the future. When a planet squares the nodes, there can be a realization of both ends, the past and the future simultaneously, but you can get stuck because you're just sort of going back and forth. The resolution to this is to look to the past and see how, and this is a theme I've talked about for now months and months and months, how what you've repressed, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, the self-judgment that you no longer need, okay, and taking responsibility and utilizing your talents, okay. We all have some sort of talent associated with structuring our lives. Some of us are better than others, utilizing the talents that we have, okay, and then moving forward into that place of the North Node in Cancer, where we are following our heart and our nurturing spirit. Okay, on the next day, March 20th, Mars, okay, it's at 23 degrees of Capricorn, makes a conjunction to Jupiter at 23 degrees of Capricorn, which is the same degree as the Pluto-Saturn conjunction. Mars and Jupiter is a 2-year cycle. Any cycle with Mars is a 2-year cycle. And it is expansion. So Jupiter wants to expand. Mars is energy. And so this is a very potent combination. One of the things that can happen with this combination, just in general, is that we can be over confident. There's an overconfidence that comes with this. So we need to be careful. We need to pace ourselves. We can burn out if we're not careful with this. This is a 2-year cycle. It's going to take 2 years for this thing to manifest. So pace yourself. All right. And it has to do with the structures of power within your own life. It has to do with your own philosophy of life. It has to do with your thoughts about what it takes to create the foundations in your life, Capricorn. Okay? On the 21st, Saturn moves into Aquarius for the first time. Okay? Now, Saturn moves into Aquarius. Okay, I got to talk about something. So just like when a planet moves into a sign for the first time, you look at the planet in that sign, but I like to look at the ruler of the sign that it's going into. So Aquarius, the ruler of Aquarius is Uranus. The ruler of Aquarius is also Saturn, because in classical astrology, before we knew Uranus was out there, Saturn was the ruler of Aquarius, and ancient astrology, people who study ancient astrology still use that, and I think Vedic still uses that. We have to look at both. But of course, we know where Saturn is because it's at the first degree of Aquarius. But where's Uranus? Well, Uranus is at 5 degrees of Aquarius. I mean, 5 degrees of Taurus. Do you remember what that was? It's a widow standing in an open grave. Let go of the past. So we have that energy again. Let go of the past. Let go of the past. And Aquarius is a very future-oriented energy. And so we are starting to get a taste of what it's going to be like when Saturn is in Aquarius. And Saturn is, I believe, going to be in Aquarius. And I'm believe this is true, but it may not be. And I'm pretty sure it is. It's going to be in Aquarius when when the United States has its Pluto return in 2022. So it's important. It's important. Okay. All right. So that's going on. I'm telling you, there's a lot going on right around this time. This is exciting. I love sextiles, as I said, and I explained why. And it's not just because the word sex is in the word. That's one reason, but there are other reasons. On March 22nd, which happens to be my husband's birthday, happy birthday, Michael, we're going to have 2 sextiles. And this is just, the synchronicity of this is just blowing me away. So I want to share it with you because this excites me. So I'm going to excite you maybe with this. So sextiles are opportunities to learn, opportunities to change your mind about things, opportunities for progressive thinking. Okay, sharing of information, gathering of facts. Depends, whether you're dealing with the Gemini or the Aquarian energy. For these 2 sets, one has more of an Aquarian flavor and one has a more of a Gemini flavor. Now, we have Mercury at 5 degrees of Pisces in a sextile to Uranus at 5 degrees of Taurus. Now, why is that so astounding? Well, first of all, this is a Aquarian side sextile. So this is what you know. This is progressive thinking. This is an opportunity to change your mind and move in a more progressive direction. Okay? This is about sharing what you know. Mercury and Uranus are connected in that Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. And they're in a sextile to one another, which is communicative. And so this is an opportunity for your higher self, Uranus, and your higher mind, Uranus, to communicate with your lower mind, Mercury, in all those sort of Aquarian things I talked about, the progressivity, the revolutionary energy. Okay. Now we have Venus making a sextile to Neptune. Venus is at 19 degrees of Taurus. Neptune is at 19 degrees of Taurus. This is more of a Gemini side sextile. And so it has a curiosity factor, an opening the lines of communication factor. Okay. Venus and Neptune. Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, making a sextile. And in both cases, we're working with the energy of water and earth. Water and earth is emotions and body. So listen to your body, listen to your emotions. It is the feminine. Okay? The 2 elements associated with the feminine is earth and water. I would, let's see. Yeah, okay. I was going to tell you to look at something, but I haven't put it up yet, so you can't look at it. Now, whew, get overcome. There's so much to talk about. On the next day, we have another synodic cycle begin. And this time, it's a synodic cycle between Pluto, which is our unconscious soul desires, and Mars, which is our conscious desires. Every 2 years, Pluto and Mars come together in the sign that Pluto is in and make a conjunction to start a 2-year synodic cycle, which allows our unconscious soul desires to be made conscious through the actions of Mars. Big deal. This is a big deal. This is how we evolve. This is how we evolve our souls. This is how we evolve the soul of the world. Okay? The world soul, as it were. This conjunction occurs at 25 degrees of Capricorn. Now, this is going to be important. It's very close to that 23 degrees, right, of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. But we're going to have Jupiter. We're going to have some Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions, 3 of them this year. I actually did a video on that. If you want to check that out, I can put the link below. And I think 2 of them, 1 or 2 of them, are happening at 25 degrees of Capricorn. So this is another one of those degrees that keeps getting activated. And this is a new 2-year cycle. It says a store filled with precious oriental rugs. It says the use of cultural and artistic processes as a means to enhance personal comfort and appreciation. Okay. Just as we get to express our what our desire is as a soul. Really, Pluto in Capricorn is a desire for power to a certain extent, but that power has to come through responsible action. That power has to come to a certain extent through sacrifice and applying yourself. It's Capricorn. It's work, and it's hard work, and sometimes it's years and years of work before you actually it's a maturing factor. It's like learning how to play the game, the 3rd-dimensional game. How do you live on this planet, Capricorn? Okay, so this is another opportunity for us to take responsibility for ourselves. And wherever this happens to fall in your chart, it's in that area of life where you need to take responsibility. For me, it's in my house of work and health. So I've always taken responsibility for my work, but I haven't always taken responsibility for my health. And so I have to do that. And so you know it, I am. So don't worry about me. I'm doing it. All right. On the 23rd. On the 24th, we have a new moon in Aries. Now, I said with all this Pisces energy, it's all sort of like this cauldron, and then Aries is the intention. Well, we've already started to focus and focalize our intention. But when you have the new moon in Aries, that's when things really start to cook. Okay? And so this is so exciting to me because the new moon in Aries occurs at 5 degrees of Aries. Okay, so wherever 5 degrees of Aries is in your chart, that's where a new beginning is starting. And with Aries, it's always like new beginnings, like boom, right? Aries is always going to be a very active area in your chart. It's always going to have that martial energy, that like, let's get going. So it depends. If you're an Aries rising, you're going to be like, I want to get going. If you have Aries in the 2nd house, you might be like, I got to work on getting my finances together, and I have to work for it, and I have to make money, or I have to do so. I have to take care. I have to survive. But, if it's in the 3rd house, it's like your mind just goes like, whoop, right? So there's this upsurge of energy with the new moon in Aries. But I want to tell you about the Sabian symbol associated with 5 degrees of Aries, which is very exciting to me. It says a triangle with wings. Oh, what's exciting about that? Well, Dane Rudgers says the capacity for self-transcending. And the key word, as Dane Rudgers says, is new dimension. A new dimension. So for those of you who know about 3rd dimension and 5th dimension and 7th dimension and 9th dimension, here's an opportunity to do some dimension hopping. Okay, and that dimension hopping is like, you don't, as I understand it, you don't just jump into a new dimension and you're in a different world, but you become aware of a new dimension. You become aware. And in that awareness, and this is something that I probably just want to say briefly, because I actually had a phone call about this. A gentleman from New York called me at my home to ask me about this, because he was feeling very disconnected from everything around him. Like he was sort of living in this other realm while simultaneously like having to walk the streets of New York City. And that's kind of the feeling with the fifth dimension. It's like you're aware of what's going on around you, but you don't necessarily feel connected to it. And yet you're in this other realm. And what it does is it makes you look at the world in a very different way. And it does give you a certain level of detachment, so that you can really survive, because the fifth dimension is very different energy. It's very sensitive. There's a lot of sensitivity. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of, and it's very hard to be a bridge between those two dimensions, because in one dimension you're seeing people suffering, and in the other dimension, you know the potential that they don't have to. And so holding that space can be challenging, but this is the time to hold that space. This is the time to hold that space. So that's all very, very exciting to me. And the new moon is square the nodes of the moon. And when things are square the nodes of the moon, we have to resolve. There has to be a resolution, because if you want to actually start and move into this new dimension, there's sort of a procedure that you have to go through. And the procedure is, again, to look to the past and to let go of the self-judgment, all that Capricorn, shoulda, coulda, woulda, and to a certain extent, let go of that third dimension and move into that place of a loving heart with Cancer, the North Node in Cancer. Yeah. So, and then on the 25th, so like every day something big's happened. We have another synodic cycle, and that's the Sun and Chiron. Chiron is the wound that will not heal. It's in Aries right now. So I've talked about Chiron and Aries before. It's the wound of the masculine. It could be the wound of the toxic masculine. It could be the wound associated with identity, your rights to decide who you are. It could be wounds around warriors, the warrior wound. Um, and such. So I don't want to talk too much about it, because I've talked about it before, and there are other astrologers that do great work with Chiron, so you can check those out. I don't have anybody specific that I'm thinking of right now or anything you can watch, but you know how to do it. Just Google it, right? And you'll get some great information about Chiron. But the Sun makes a conjunction to Chiron, and that occurs at 6 degrees of Aries, and the Sabian symbol for that is a square with one of its sides brightly illumined, the emotional desire for concrete, stabilized existence as a person. And so this is the need for emotional security. This is the need for emotional security. And so there's that energy is sort of overlaid to a certain extent over the Sun Chiron conjunction. The Sun illuminates, and so the Sun will illuminate the wound. Okay. The United States has Chiron in Aries. It's at 20 degrees. And so, we're kind of very warlike, and we're going to have to, come to terms when we have our Chiron return, which happens every like 52 years in the United States. So it's not our first rodeo when it comes to our Chiron return. But when that does happen, we're going to have to deal with it. Okay. I don't exactly know when that happened. I don't have that in my head yet, if I could access it, right? Okay. And then this Chiron Sun conjunction is square the nodes as well. And so it's about letting go of the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and moving to self-nurturance and self-care and self-love. Stop judging yourself. Get to the core of that. Was that your upbringing? Was that your parental upbringing? Were your parents great and non-judgmental and unconditionally loving? Some people have parents like that. But what about the society you were in? What about school? What about your friends? What about the work environment you're in? Stop judging yourself. Utilizing good judgment is not self-judgment, and it's not criticism. I'm not sure there's such a thing as constructive criticism, quite frankly, if it's criticism. But, you could always say to somebody, well, this is how you did it, and this is what happened. Perhaps we could look at doing it this way, giving them the choice, giving them the options, and they'll decide what to do. Okay, let's see. There's a little bit more happening. How long is this? 15 minutes. No, have a cup of coffee or pot or something. All right. I actually was on a 5-day juice fast sort of cleanse thing, and I had a half a cup of coffee this morning. It's my first caffeine in a week, so I'm a little talkative, but I'm kind of glad I had the half a cup of coffee, because I feel like in order to get all this information out before the 60-minute mark, I needed the coffee. Okay, so on March 28th, we have two lovely trines, both of them to Venus, and actually happening on the same day. The first one is a trine to Jupiter, and that occurs at 24 degrees of Capricorn and 24 degrees of Taurus. These are Leo side trines. So Leo is creative, it's self-expressive. It can be a little bit like selfish, in that I'm the greatest thing since sliced cheese kind of thing, or sliced bread, or whatever you think is great, you're greater, right? So if there's somebody out there who's a little bit full of themselves, you might be finding themselves being a little bit more full of themselves. Venus is at 24 degrees of Taurus. That's right at the top of Donald Trump's chart. And Venus is not a bad energy. Venus is not a bad energy. So we could expect that he is going to be pounding his chest over something, which, I mean, it could be said at any time. But we also have to remember that with not so much with Jupiter there, but with Pluto there on the next conjunction, which occurs at 25 degrees of Capricorn and Taurus, there can be power moves and money moves, because we're dealing with Taurus. So some money stuff's going to come up on the 28th. On the 30th, Mars finally moves out of Capricorn, where it's been for about 6 weeks, and moves into Aquarius. The energy of revolution, okay? The energy of out-of-the-box thinking, the energy of humanitarian endeavor, the energy of anarchy, the energy of disruption. So Mars is there. And then on the next day, Mars makes a conjunction to Saturn, and that occurs at 1 degree of Aquarius. And I talked about that 1 degree of Aquarius in the first video, part 1. So this, and with Mars conjunct Saturn in Aquarius, the sign of the common good and revolutionary action, and Saturn being the structure and Mars being the energy, this is the wave. This is revolution. This is the revolution of evolution. It's not just changing it back to what it was before. It's changing it and moving it in the opposite direction of where it is, but at a higher level of awareness. So it's a very exciting time to be here. March promises to be a very potent and powerful time, an opportunity for us to really decide where we're going to put our energy, how we're going to live our lives. The 2020 vibration is one of building, and you have to know what you're building. You have to have the plans, and March is going to be an opportunity for us to get some of those plans developed, and the start of getting those plans manifested out into the world. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed doing it. I was very excited about March. And it's not going to necessarily get crazier, but you have to remember that you are in charge of your own reactions, responses, and how you're going to decide to work with the energy that's given us. Whenever there's crisis, there's opportunity. And those people who hold the cards know that, and they will utilize it if you let them. So you be just as aware of them And even though you might not be working at the same level as far as how much power you have in a situation, you always have power over yourself. And that's the most important thing. Have yourself a great month. And we're going to go through this journey together. Thank you for all my new subscribers. Thank you to all my old subscribers. Thank you to all the other readers out there. Thank you, Johnny, for doing a shout out on me. That's very sweet of you. He's a really great guy. Thank you, Ona. Thank you, Jenlyn. Thank you, all of you. This is, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to shed a little light at a time of darkness. But ultimately, it's your own inner light that's going to get you there. So don't forget to look inside your own heart, because all the answers lie within. I love you guys, and I'll see you again next month for this. And I'll see you tomorrow for astrology, and all the other days for all the other things I'll decide to put out there. And yes, I am going to have a class, and it looks like it's going to start in April, but I will keep you posted. There'll probably be one on Kabbalah, working with the Tree of Life. It's going to be one with astrology. And then I'll see what else people are interested in doing. Okay, guys. Namaste. Said the right way. Bye-bye.